Morning light in Pompeii. The day begins before the city fully wakes, in that delicate hour when the air still feels cool against the skin and the stones of the street hold the memory of night. Somewhere beyond the rooftops, a thin band of pale light forms at the horizon, and little by little the darkness loosens its grip. In a modest Roman house, tucked along a narrow lane, a citizen stirs beneath the woolen blanket, listening to the first sounds of morning. Not loud sounds, not yet, just the faint shuffle of sandals in a neighboring courtyard, the soft clink of clay against clay, the distant call of a vendor testing his voice, as if warming it like a musician warms an instrument. The room is simple, built around function and habit. The walls are plastered, slightly uneven, painted in muted reds and ochres that have dulled with time and smoke. In the corner, a small oil lamp has burned low through the night, leaving a thin thread of soot above it on the wall. The citizen sits up slowly, letting sleep fall away in layers, and the cool air meets bare arms and shoulders. The floor beneath is hard and smooth, stone worn by years of footsteps. When his feet touch it, there is a quiet shock of cold, a reminder that the world is real again. He moves through the doorway into the atrium, the central heart of the home, where the roof opens above a shallow basin. Even here, indoors, the morning sky is visible, a soft gray-blue framed by beams and tile. Dew clings to the edges of the opening, and a few drops fall into the basin with tiny, patient ripples. The air smells faintly of yesterday's smoke, of olive oil, of damp stone. A household slave has already arisen earlier, as always, to prepare the simplest beginning: water, bread, perhaps a few olives if there are any left from the last market day. At the household shrine, the lararium, small painted figures of protective spirits watch over the family. A tiny offering is placed, not grand, not dramatic, just a gesture made every morning the way breathing is made, as if the day itself must be greeted properly. Fingers touch the edge of the shrine, steady and respectful, then fall back to the side. Outside, the lane brightens, the soundscape grows, a door opening, a broom against stone, a donkey snorting softly as a cart is hitched somewhere close by. Before work, before the baths, before the marketplace, there is the simple act of stepping into the street and becoming part of the city's pulse. The citizen takes a piece of bread, rough and dry, and dips it in watered wine, the common morning taste of Rome's far-flung towns. The texture is plain but comforting. The day is not yet heavy, it is still forming. And as he passes through the doorway and into the narrowing street, the city begins to reveal itself. Walls painted with fading advertisements, the shallow grooves in the stones made by countless wheels, the first shafts of sunlight sliding down between buildings like slow, golden water. The street outside the house is still half in shadow, but the city is waking with quiet determination, like a giant stretching its limbs before rising to its feet. The stones beneath the citizen's sandals are cool and slightly damp from the night air, their surface uneven from generations of wear.
Narrow drainage channels run along the sides, and stepping stones cross the road at intervals, raised just enough to keep feet dry when rain or wastewater flows through. He knows where each one sits without looking. Habit guides him more than sight. Doors begin to open one by one, wood scraping softly against stone thresholds. A woman steps out carrying a clay jug, her hair still loosely tied, heading toward a public fountain where fresh water trickles endlessly from a carved spout. The sound of it is steady and comforting, a liquid heartbeat for the neighborhood. A boy runs past, barefoot, chasing a stray dog that darts between legs and baskets, tail wagging wildly as if the morning itself is a game. The air fills with layered smells, fresh bread from a nearby bakery where the ovens have been burning since before dawn, smoke from cooking fires, a faint trace of animals, mules and donkeys used for transport, mingling with the sharper scent of damp stone. Above, laundry hangs from wooden beams jutting out over the street, fabric catching the first warm light and swaying gently in the barely noticeable breeze. The citizen walks at an unhurried pace, blending into the slow-moving flow of neighbors, workers, and early traders. Greetings are exchanged in passing, small nods, brief words, nothing elaborate. In a Roman town, faces are familiar, even if names are not always known. A barber already stands outside his shop, arranging tools on a small table, the metal catching glints of light. A baker's apprentice sprinkles flour across a wooden surface, preparing the next batch of dough, with movements learned through repetition rather than instruction. Voices grow louder as the main street approaches. Wheels creak as a cart rolls by, pulled by a patient mule whose hooves strike the stone in steady rhythm. The driver calls out a warning before turning, his voice practiced and confident. Somewhere above, from an upper window, someone empties a basin of water into the street channel below, careful but not careful enough to avoid splashing a passing laborer, who grumbles but does not stop walking. Shops begin to reveal their goods to the day. Wooden shutters fold open to display jars of oil, baskets of figs, stacks of pottery, bolts of dyed cloth. Colors brighten the street, deep reds, dusty yellows, indigo blues faded by sun and time. The city, only moments ago muted and gray, now feels alive with texture and movement. The citizen breathes in, not deeply, not dramatically, just enough to take in the familiar mixture that means home. Work awaits, responsibilities wait, but for a few minutes longer he is simply part of the morning tide, carried gently forward as Pompeii fully awakens around him.
The Forum and the pulse of the city. As the streets widen, the flow of people naturally bends towards the heart of the city, the Forum, that open space where business, politics, worship, and daily life fold into one another like overlapping voices in a long conversation. The paving stones here are broader, more carefully laid, though worn smooth by decades of footsteps.
Columns rise ahead in pale rows, catching the morning sun along their edges while their bases remain wrapped in shadow. The air feels different in this open space, lighter, stirred by movement and the gentle sweep of early light. The citizen slows slightly as he enters the forum, not from hesitation, but from awareness. Here one is seen. Faces from every part of town pass by, merchants in better tunics, farmers from outside the walls carrying produce in baskets balanced against their hips, scribes with wax tablets tucked under their arms, and officials moving with measured purpose. A pair of soldiers stand near the steps of a public building, helmets tucked under their arms, speaking quietly while scanning the crowd with calm, practiced eyes. On one side of the square, the basilica dominates, its tall interior space meant for legal matters and business agreements. Voices echo from within, not loud, but layered, bouncing against stone walls in soft waves. Nearby, under a shaded portico, money changers sit behind small tables, stacks of coins laid out in neat arrangements. The faint metallic clink of silver and bronze being counted blends with the murmur of negotiation. The citizen pauses at the edge of the open area, taking in the rhythms. This is where news travels faster than anywhere else. A group has gathered around a man reading from a notice posted on a wall, announcements perhaps, or news from Rome itself. People lean in, listening carefully, brows furrowed in concentration. Most cannot read fluently, so the spoken word carries the weight of knowledge. Pigeons flutter near the temple steps, pecking at crumbs scattered by passing hands. Their wings create sudden movements, brief and harmless. Incense drifts faintly from a nearby shrine, its sweet, resinous scent cutting through the heavier smells of animals and food. Somewhere behind him, a vendor calls out the price of fresh dates, voice rising and falling in a practiced cadence designed to reach as many ears as possible without sounding desperate. The citizen crosses the square diagonally, sandals scuffing softly over dust that gathers in the shallow grooves of the stones. He nods to a man he recognizes from previous mornings, not a friend exactly, but a familiar presence in the pattern of the day. Their exchange is brief, a greeting, a comment about the weather, nothing more. Yet these small threads hold the social fabric together. Sunlight now reaches fully into the forum, brightening the pale stone and casting shorter shadows. The city is no longer waking, it is fully alive. Every sound, every step, every quiet conversation feeds into a shared pulse, steady and enduring, like the heartbeat of a living organism that does not know how fragile it truly is.
Leaving the brightness of the forum behind, the citizen turns into a narrower street, but slopes gently away from the open square. Here, the sun arrives later, filtered between upper floors and overhanging balconies. The shade is welcome, especially as the promise of heat already lingers in the still air. This is the hour for work, not hurried, but steady, before the sun climbs high enough to press down on backs and shoulders. His destination is a small workshop, one of many woven into the city's residential fabric. In Pompeii, work and home are rarely separate worlds. They exist side by side, sharing walls and doorways. The entrance stands open, a wooden lintel darkened by years of smoke and touch. Inside, the air smells of clay and damp earth.
Shelves line the walls, holding half-formed vessels, bowls waiting to be fired, jars shaped yesterday and left to dry overnight. He runs his hand across the work table as he enters, feeling the fine grit of clay dust beneath his fingers. Light slips in from the doorway, illuminating floating particles that drift lazily, turning in slow spirals whenever someone moves. A wheel stands ready near the center of the room, its surface worn smooth by countless rotations. A younger worker is already there, foot pumping gently, hands steady as wet clay rises between his palms. The soft, rhythmic thump of the wheel against the floor creates a quiet grounding sound, almost like a heartbeat. No one speaks much at first. There is comfort in the familiar sequence of movements, kneading clay, shaping, smoothing, setting pieces aside with care. Outside, the street continues its own rhythm, footsteps, distant voices, the rattle of a passing cart. Inside, time feels thicker, slowed by concentration. The citizen sits, wets his hands, and begins his own task, thumbs pressing inward, fingers guiding the form outward, the vessel emerging not through force, but through patience. Sweat forms gradually along the brow, not from exertion alone, but from the growing warmth of the day. He wipes it away with the back of his wrist, leaving a faint smear of clay across his skin. The smell of earth deepens as more vessels take shape, each one slightly different, each carrying the quiet imprint of human touch. There is no rush. The pace is dictated by the material itself. Push too hard, and the form collapses. Move too fast, and the walls thin unevenly. From time to time, someone steps outside to check the kiln in the courtyard behind the shop. Heat radiates from its brick mouth, steady and intense, carrying the scent of firing clay into the air. The transformation from soft earth to hardened vessel happens out of sight, inside that controlled fire, a reminder that much of life's change occurs where eyes cannot follow. By the time the sun finally reaches into the doorway, laying a bright strip across the floor, several new shapes stand in quiet rows along the shelves. Work has begun, and the day has found its purpose.
By the time the sun stands high enough to pour light directly into the workshop doorway, the air inside has grown thick and warm, clinging to skin and slowing movement. Work does not stop abruptly. It softens, eases, like a river reaching calmer ground. Hands that had been shaping clay since morning begin to pause more often, fingers stretching, shoulders rolling back to release tension. The body signals what the mind already knows. It is time to step away, if only for a short while. Outside, the street has changed since morning. Shadows have shortened, retreating toward walls and under overhangs. The bright stone reflects light upward, making even the shaded spaces feel warmer. Sounds travel differently in the heat, slightly muted, as if the air itself absorbs their sharpness. The citizen steps out, blinking once as the brightness settles into his eyes, and joins the slow drift of others seeking food and brief rest. He does not return home. Instead, he walks toward Thermopolium, a small street-side eatery where hot food is served from large clay jars set into a stone counter.
The surface is worn smooth from years of elbows resting, coins exchanged, hands passing bowls back and forth. The smell reaches him before he arrives, lentils, herbs, a hint of garlic carried on warm air. It is not a rich aroma, but it is filling and familiar. A few people already stand there, leaning against the counter, eating in quiet companionship. There is little ceremony in these meals. A ladle dips into a jar, steam rising in soft curls, and a portion is poured into a simple bowl. Bread is added, sometimes dipped, sometimes torn and eaten plain. The citizen pays a small coin, accepts his bowl, and steps aside to make room for the next person. He eats slowly, not out of mindfulness, but from habit. Food is fuel, but also pause. Around him, conversations rise and fall in fragments, talk of prices at the market, of a relative visiting from the countryside, of a rumor heard earlier in the forum. Nothing urgent, nothing grand, just threads of daily life woven together in the shared shade of the awning. A dog waits nearby, hopeful but patient, eyes tracking every hand that lifts a piece of bread. Eventually, someone drops a crust, and the animal snaps it up with a quick, satisfied motion before settling again. Flies drift lazily in the warm air, brushed away without irritation. When the bowl is emptied, the citizen wipes it with the last piece of bread, leaving nothing behind, then returns it to the counter. There is a heaviness in the limbs now, a gentle pull toward rest, but the day is only half done. He drinks a little watered wine from a shared jug, the liquid cool against the throat, then turns back toward the workshop. The sun watches from directly above, silent and unblinking, as the city continues its steady, ordinary rhythm, unaware of how fragile ordinary days can be. The walk back to the workshop feels slower, not because the distance has changed, but because the heat presses down with quiet insistence. The stones of the street, pale and worn, now radiate warmth through the thin soles of sandals. Even the air seems heavier, thickened by sunlight and the layered scents of the city. Voices soften during this part of the day. People move with less urgency, choosing shade where they can find it, pausing beneath awnings or beneath the narrow strips of shadow cast by upper balconies. The citizen passes a fountain where water spills endlessly from a carved spout into a shallow basin below. A small line has formed, women filling jugs, a boy splashing his face, an older man simply standing close enough to feel the coolness rising from the surface. The gentle, continuous sound of flowing water brings a momentary sense of relief, like a reminder that not everything in the world is ruled by heat and effort. Back inside the workshop, the air is warmer than before, but familiar. Clay vessels rest where they were left, surfaces slightly firmer now as moisture continues to leave them. The younger worker wipes his forehead with a cloth and returns to the wheel. The rhythm resumes, not fast, not slow, just steady. Hands shape, smooth, lift. The wheel turns, humming softly against the floor. Outside, a cart rattles past, then fades into distance. The afternoon carries a certain quiet focus. There is less conversation, more listening, to tools, to materials, to the small sounds that tell whether something is going right or wrong. A vessel that wobbles too much must be corrected gently. A wall that grows too thin needs support. Every movement leaves a trace, and every mistake shows itself later, sometimes only after the firing. Sweat runs down the back absorbed into fabric that clings to skin. Occasionally, someone steps outside for a breath of moving air, then returns without a word. The day stretches, but not unpleasantly. There is a kind of calm in repetition, in the knowledge that this hour is much like yesterday's, and tomorrow's will be the same. Through the doorway, sunlight begins to shift, angling lower, no longer directly overhead. Shadows lengthen across the floor in narrow lines. Somewhere nearby, a child laughs, the sound bright and quick before dissolving into the wider hum of the street. Life continues in small, unremarkable moments, hands at work, breath steady, time passing almost unnoticed.
As the sun begins its slow descent, the city shifts once more, trading the heavy stillness of afternoon for a renewed, gentler movement. Work slows, tools are set aside, and people begin drifting back toward the streets, not with the sharp urgency of morning, but with the soft pull of evening needs. The citizen leaves the workshop with clay still faintly lining his fingernails, wiping his hands on a damp cloth before stepping into the cooling air. The marketplace lies ahead, its open space now bathed in a warmer light. Stalls that seemed harsh and bright earlier now glow softly, their colors deepened by the lowering sun. Vendors call out their final offers of the day, voices carrying with a slightly relaxed tone. There is no panic here, only the shared understanding that daylight has limits and goods must find homes before darkness arrives. Baskets of produce line the edges of the square, figs split open to reveal deep red flesh, bunches of grapes catching the light like small clusters of glass, onions with papery skins rustling gently in the breeze. A fish seller stands near a shallow basin of water, the smell sharp but expected, his hands moving quickly as he wraps purchases in broad leaves. Chickens cluck irritably in wicker cages, feathers ruffling each time someone brushes past. The citizen moves slowly between stalls, pausing to inspect, to weigh cost against need. Coins pass from hand to hand with soft metallic taps. A small loaf of bread is chosen, still warm from an afternoon bake. A handful of olives is added, their brine scent familiar and comforting. Nothing extravagant, just what is needed for the evening meal. Nearby, a group of men stand beneath a shaded portico, talking with animated gestures about news from beyond the city, rumors of political shifts in Rome, of grain shipments delayed, of distant troubles that feel important yet strangely far away. Laughter bursts out from time to time, brief and loud before fading back into the hum. Children weave between adults, chasing one another around columns, their sandals slapping against stone. A mother calls sharply, and the chase dissolves into obedient retreat. The air carries a mixture of scents now, herbs crushed underfoot, dust stirred by movement, the lingering trace of cooked food from nearby stalls. Above it all, the sky softens from bright blue to a gentler shade, the first hints of evening forming along the horizon. The day's labor begins to loosen its grip, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of small tasks completed and simple needs met. The citizen adjusts the bundle under his arm and turns toward home, walking through a city that for now feels eternal. Before returning home, the citizen turns instead toward one of the public baths, drawn not only by the need to wash away the day's dust, but by the quiet ritual of shared space that the baths provide. The entrance stands open, framed by worn stone,
its threshold smoothed by countless feet. Inside, the air shifts immediately, warmer, heavier, carrying the layered scents of oil, steam, and damp stone. Voices echo differently here, softened and rounded by the curved ceilings and tiled walls. Sandals slap gently against the floor as men move between rooms, some wrapped loosely in cloth, others already glistening with oil. The citizen pays a small fee at the entrance, coins disappearing into a box with a dull clink, then steps into the changing area, where benches line the walls and niches hold folded garments. He sets down his bundle, removes his tunic, and hands it to a young attendant who will watch over it. The stone floor beneath his bare feet is warm, almost comforting after the harder chill of morning. He moves first into the tepidarium, the warm room, where heat lingers softly in the air without pressing too hard. Conversations drift lazily here, men sitting on benches, letting their bodies adjust, speaking of small matters, a job well done, a stubborn mule, a neighbor's new roof tiles. Next comes the caldarium, where steam rises in gentle waves from heated pools. The warmth settles deep into muscles, loosening the stiffness left by hours of work. Water laps quietly against stone edges as bathers lower themselves in, exhaling in slow relief. The citizen closes his eyes briefly, feeling the weight of the day dissolve into the heat. Oil is applied to the skin, then scraped away with a curved metal tool, carrying with it dust, sweat, and fatigue. Afterward, he steps into the frigidarium, the cold pool. The shock is quick but cleansing, a sharp reminder that the body is alive. Laughter erupts from someone plunging in too fast, the sound bouncing off walls before fading into softer murmurs. Breath steadies, heart slows, and the mind clears. When he dresses again, skin clean and senses calm, the world feels lighter. The baths have not changed the city, nor the future, but they have given this moment a gentle pause, a space where effort meets rest, and where ordinary lives briefly share the same warm air. Evening at home. The streets glow softly now, lit not by torches yet, but by the lingering warmth of the sinking sun. Light rests low along the tops of buildings, turning pale stone to amber and casting long shadows that stretch like quiet fingers across the road. The citizen walks home at an easy pace, the sounds of the day gentler than before. Fewer carts, fewer shouts, more conversation drifting from open doorways. When he reaches his house, the doorway stands open to invite the evening air inside. The atrium is cooler now, the basin beneath the open roof reflecting a strip of sky fading toward deeper blue. A small oil lamp has been lit and placed near the lararium, its flames steady and patient, casting soft, trembling light over the painted figures of the household gods. The room smells faintly of olive oil and warm bread. He sets down the bundle from the market and washes his hands in a shallow bowl, water rippling as dust slips away. Family members move quietly through the space, a wife arranging simple dishes, a child speaking in a low voice about something seen in the street, an older relative seated already, watching with tired but content eyes. No one rushes. Evening carries a natural slowing, as if the whole household breathes together. The meal is plain but sufficient. Bread is torn, olives shared, perhaps a bit of cheese if the week has been kind. A small dish of vegetables stewed earlier fills the air with the scent of herbs. They eat reclining slightly, not in luxury, but in comfort, speaking of the day in fragments, a neighbor's news, the price of figs, a story overheard in the forum. Words pass gently, without weight. Outside, the city quiets further. Footsteps fade. Somewhere a door closes with a hollow thud. A distant dog barks once, then again, before settling. Above, the sky deepens into indigo, the first stars appearing between the roof beams. The oil lamp flickers, shadows moving along the walls like slow, silent dancers. The day, ordinary and complete, draws to a close without ceremony, without warning, without the slightest hint that the future holds anything different from tomorrow. Night settles over the city, not all at once, but in layers. First, the colors fade, the warm tones of stone and plaster giving way to soft gray. Then the sounds withdraw, one by one, until only the faintest echoes remain. A distant voice, the shuffle of sandals somewhere unseen, the creak of a wooden shutter closing against the evening air. Pompeii, which only hours ago pulsed with trade, laughter, and movement, now breathes more slowly, like a great animal at rest. Inside the house, the oil lamp burns lower, its flame small but steady. The family prepares for sleep in quiet routine. Bedding is laid out on simple frames, blankets shaken once before being spread. A final sip of watered wine is taken, a last word spoken, then silence begins to claim the space. The citizen lies back, the day's labor resting deep in his muscles, a dull and satisfying weight. Through the open roof above the atrium, a slice of night sky shows itself, dark, scattered with patient stars. The air cools gradually, drifting through the house and across sleeping forms. Outside, the street is nearly empty. A late traveler passes, sandals scraping softly against stone, then fading into distance. Somewhere, a dog noses through shadows, searching for scraps left behind by the day. The city's usual sounds have softened to whispers. Above everything, Mount Vesuvius stands in darkness beyond the walls, its silhouette barely visible against the sky. It has watched over the town for generations, a quiet presence on the horizon, so familiar that it no longer commands attention. Tonight it appears no different than it did yesterday, its slopes still, its peak calm beneath the stars. Clouds drift slowly across the sky, thin and pale in the moonlight. The night feels ordinary, almost gentle. No tremor shakes the ground, no sound disturbs the air. Sleep comes easily, carrying dreams shaped by simple concerns, work, family, tomorrow's tasks. The future seems certain, as it always has. And yet, in the deep silence of the night, the mountain waits, its secrets hidden beneath layers of stone and fire, while an entire city sleeps unaware beneath the quiet, star-filled sky.
Dawn returns the way it always does, quietly, without announcement. A thin gray light gathers over the rooftops, slipping between beams and over tiled edges. Inside the house, the citizen wakes slowly, not because of any disturbance,
but because habit guides him back toward the world of the living. The air feels slightly heavier than usual, though not enough to raise concern. It is simply noted and forgotten. He sits up, listening. The city is waking again, but the sounds feel softer, slightly delayed, as if wrapped in cloth. A cart rolls somewhere far away. A door opens. A voice calls out in greeting, answered by another. Nothing unusual, nothing urgent. The routine unfolds just as it did yesterday. In the atrium, the basin beneath the open roof reflects a sky that looks faintly blurred, as though a thin veil hangs high above. The citizen glances upward for only a moment before turning to the household shrine. A small offering is placed as always. Fingers touch the cool wall beside the painted figures. The gesture is automatic, steady, grounded in repetition rather than thought. Outside, the street holds a pale haze that catches the morning light. It softens edges, dulls distant shapes. Someone nearby coughs lightly, blaming dust or damp air. A woman shakes out a cloth from an upper window, sending a small cloud drifting downward. The smell of baking bread still rises from the bakery, though it carries a faint sharpness today, something metallic beneath the warmth. The citizen walks toward the workshop, sandals striking stone in familiar rhythm. Neighbors pass by with nods and half-smiles. A man points briefly toward the mountain, commenting on a strange cloud formation above its peak, but the remark carries no fear, only curiosity. The mountain has always stood there. Clouds gather, clouds fade. The world continues. At the workshop, clay waits to be shaped. Hands return to their work. The wheel turns. The morning stretches forward, ordinary in every visible way, wrapped in small routines and quiet expectations. The day has begun again, just like any other. The morning unfolds with familiar motions, yet something beneath the surface feels slightly out of place, like a melody played one note off without anyone quite knowing why. The citizen shapes clay at the wheel, hands steady, eyes focused, but the air in the workshop seems thicker than it should be. Breathing feels just a little heavier, as if the warmth has arrived too early in the day. Outside, sounds travel oddly. Voices echo longer than usual between the walls, and small noises seem sharper: a dropped tool, the creak of a cartwheel, the distant bark of a dog. Every now and then, a faint vibration hums through the floor, so slight it could be mistaken for imagination. The wheel trembles once beneath his hands, just enough to ripple the surface of a forming bowl. He pauses, frowns briefly, then continues, blaming uneven pressure or tired legs. A neighbor steps into the doorway, wiping sweat from his brow, though the sun is not yet high. He mentions that the well water tastes strange today, a little bitter, a little warm. They exchange a shrug. Wells change. Air shifts. These things happen. The conversation fades as quickly as it began. When the citizen steps outside for a moment of air, he notices the sky has grown hazier, the blue dulled behind a thin gray veil. Above the distant outline of Vesuvius, a narrow plume rises, faint but persistent, like smoke from a fire too far away to matter. A few people have stopped to look, hands shading their eyes, murmuring in quiet curiosity. No one runs, no one shouts. the mountain has smoke before. Back inside, the kiln burns hotter than usual, its heat radiating farther into the room. Clay dries faster on the shelves. The younger worker coughs once, rubbing at his throat, then returns to the wheel. Time moves forward in its steady rhythm, but the comfort of repetition had begun to thin. Still, work continues. Vessels take shape. Hands remain busy. The ordinary day holds together, fragile but unbroken, as the city moves through its routines beneath a sky that no longer feels entirely its own.
The sky changes. By midday, the light has shifted in a way no one can quite name. It is not darker, not yet, but strained, as though the sun shines through layers of thin cloth. Shadows appear softer, edges blurred. The air carries a faint grit that settles on skin and lips, barely noticeable until someone wipes their face and finds gray on their fingers. The citizen steps into the street again, drawn by the growing murmur of voices. People have gathered in small clusters, all glancing toward the mountain now. The plume above Vesuvius has thickened, no longer a narrow thread, but a rising column that spreads outward at the top, pale and towering, shaped like a distant tree against the sky. It moves slowly, silently, expanding higher than any cloud they have ever seen. A faint rumble rolls through the ground, not a sharp jolt, just a low, sustained vibration that makes pottery on shelves tremble and water in basins ripple. Dogs whine. Birds lift suddenly from rooftops, wings beating in confused bursts before scattering across the hazy sky. A child begins to cry, not from injury, but from the uneasy tension that spreads through adults like an unseen signal. Still, no one fully understands. Some point, some laugh nervously, others simply watch. The citizen feels a tightening in his chest, a quiet instinct that something larger than daily life is unfolding. He looks at the sky again, noticing small white flecks drifting downward, light as dust. One lands on his forearm, warm, dry, leaving a faint trace like crushed stone. Ash, someone says. Just ash. People brush it from their shoulders and hair. The market stalls remain open. Bread is still sold. Coins still change hands. Yet every few moments another tremor passes, and the ash begins to fall more steadily, soft grains tapping against stone like the first hints of distant rain. The mountain's roar grows louder, no longer a murmur, but a deep rolling sound that seems to come from everywhere at once. The ordinary shape of the day bends under the weight of something vast and unseen. Conversations break mid-sentence. Eyes remain fixed on the towering column rising into the sky, widening, darkening at its base. The citizen turns toward home, not running, not yet, but walking faster than before, as the sky above Pompeii begins to close. Ash begins to fall. The ash that first drifted down like pale dust now falls with quiet persistence, covering rooftops, streets, shoulders, hair. It lands without heat at first, dry and soft, like flour shaken from a baker's hands. People brush it away with uncertain smiles, though their movements have grown tighter, less casual. Conversations shorten,
Eyes keep lifting toward the sky. The citizen walks quickly through the street, sandals scuffing through a growing layer of gray powder. Each step leaves a clear mark that fills in slowly behind him as more ash settles. The air tastes bitter now, carrying a sharp mineral edge that clings to the tongue. Breathing feels slightly strained, and he pulls part of his tunic over his mouth without fully thinking why. Above, the column from the mountain has turned darker, churning upward in thick folds. Flashes of light flicker within it, brief and distant, like silent lightning trapped inside smoke. The rumbling grows deeper, more constant, vibrating through walls and into bones. Tiles slip from rooftops with dull clatters, breaking on the street below. Shutters slam closed, voices rise, sharper, edged with fear. A woman stumbles past carrying a child, ash coating her hair and shoulders. A man tries to lead a mule that refuses to move, its eyes wide, nostrils flaring at a scent humans cannot detect. The market has emptied, baskets lie overturned, fruit crushed under hurried feet. Somewhere, someone shouts for a family member lost in the confusion. The citizen reaches his doorway and steps inside, heart pounding not from running, but from the sudden weight of realization. The atrium is dimmer than it should be at this hour. Ash drifts through the open roof, settling into the basin with faint, endless taps. His family looks up, eyes wide, waiting for an answer he does not have. Another tremor shakes the house, stronger this time. A crack snakes along a wall with a dry, splitting sound. Outside, the roar grows louder, rolling through the city like approaching thunder that never breaks. The sky has turned a heavy gray, swallowing the sun. Daylight fades into an unnatural twilight. The ordinary day has ended. Something immense has begun, and there is no longer any doubt.
Darkness at noon. The light fades with unnatural speed, as if a vast curtain has been drawn across the sky. What should be midday now resembles the deep shadow of late evening. Ash falls thicker, heavier, collecting on rooftops with a soft but relentless weight. Each minute the air grows harder to see through, filled with swirling gray that blurs shapes and distances. Breathing burns slightly in the chest, and every inhale carries the dry taste of stone. Inside the house, the citizen moves quickly now, urgency replacing routine. He gathers cloths, presses them into the hands of his family, gesturing for them to cover their faces. Words are short, practical, carried between tremors that rattle walls and send small fragments of plaster drifting down like powdery snow. The oil lamp flickers wildly, its flames struggling in the shifting air. Outside, the roar from the mountain no longer rises and falls. It rolls continuously, a deep, ceaseless thunder that seems to come from beneath the ground as much as from the sky. Screams echo through the street, scattered and directionless. Doors slam, feet pound across stone. Somewhere nearby, a roof collapses with a heavy crash, followed by cries quickly swallowed by the roaring dark. The citizen steps into the doorway and looks upward. The sky is gone, replaced by a churning mass of black and gray. Flashes of lightning streak through the ash cloud, brief white veins tearing across the darkness.
Ash strikes his face now with force, mixed with small stones that bounce and roll along the ground. Each impact sounds louder than it should, amplified by fear. They must leave. The house, once solid and familiar, now feels fragile, walls trembling under the weight gathering above. He leads his family into the street, moving slowly against the fall of ash, each step uncertain. Visibility shrinks to only a few paces ahead. Figures emerge and vanish like ghosts, shapes moving through a world reduced to shadow and dust. Every breath is effort, every sound is magnified. The city that felt eternal only hours ago now feels small beneath the sky's fury. Darkness at noon has swallowed Pompeii whole.
The ash is no longer drifting. It is falling with purpose, heavy and relentless, piling along streets and pressing down on rooftops. Each step sinks deeper, sandals disappearing into soft gray layers that swallow sound and make movement slow and exhausting. The air has turned thick, almost solid, forcing each breath to be drawn with effort through cloth and clenched teeth. Eyes sting, tears carving pale lines through the dust on faces. The citizen holds tightly to his family as they move forward through a street that no longer looks like itself. Familiar doorways are half buried. Statues stand ghost-like under coats of ash, their features softened, their expressions erased. A tremor shakes the ground again, and a section of wall collapses nearby with a dull, smothered crash, sending up another wave of dust that makes the world disappear for a brief heartbeats. The sound from the mountain has grown deeper still, layered now with sharp cracks and distant explosions that echo through the ash cloud. It feels as though the sky itself is breaking apart. From time to time, larger stones fall among the ash, striking roofs with sudden force, punching through tiles and sending debris into the rooms below. Cries rise, then fade quickly, swallowed by the constant roar. People stumble past, coated gray from head to foot, eyes wide and unseeing in the dark. Some call out names, others move in silence, driven only by the instinct to keep going. A man falls and struggles to stand again as ash shifts beneath him like loose sand. The citizen pulls his family toward the edge of the city, hoping for open ground, for air that might be easier to breathe beyond the crowded streets. But the darkness moves with them. It is not night, it is something heavier, closer, pressing down from above. Lightning flickers again inside the cloud, illuminating the ash in brief flashes that make every grain visible, turning the air itself into a storm of pale streaks. Thunder follows almost instantly, shaking the chest with its force. The weight of the sky grows unbearable, not just on roofs and streets, but on hearts. Pompeii is disappearing beneath a silent burial, layer by layer, as the mountain continues to speak in fire and stone. The last movements. Time loses its shape in the dark. There is no sense of minutes or hours, only the constant fall of ash and the endless effort to keep moving. The citizen's legs feel heavy,
each step sinking deeper than the last, as if the earth itself is turning soft beneath him. His family leans close, hands locked together, forming a small island of warmth and breath in a world that has grown cold and airless. The city around them is barely recognizable now. Walls lean at odd angles, roofs have collapsed under the weight above, spilling beams and tiles into the streets. What was once a straight path becomes a maze of obstacles, forcing them to turn, to climb, to step over shapes hidden beneath layers of gray. The silence between the thunderous roars feels louder than any sound, a heavy pause filled with fear and exhaustion. Breathing is agony. Cloth pressed to the mouth grows damp and clogged, and each inhale pulls dust deep into the lungs. The citizen coughs, a dry, painful sound that seems swallowed instantly by the ash-filled air. He can no longer see the mountain, nor the sky, nor the distant road he hoped would lead them out. The world has shrunk to the space of a few steps ahead, lit only by the occasional flash of lightning within the cloud above. People slow, then stop. Some kneel to catch their breath and do not rise again. Others call out weakly, voices fading. A mother holds a child close, rocking gently, whispering words meant to comfort even as her own strength drains away. The ash continues to fall, indifferent, settling over hair, shoulders, faces, softening every edge. The citizen feels his strength leaving him, not suddenly, but like a tide pulling back from shore. He pulls his family close one last time, shielding them as best he can from the falling debris, from the cold grit that coats everything. The roar above grows distant, replaced by a deep, muffled quiet as the world narrows to breath, heartbeat, and the weight pressing down from every side. In the darkness, motion slows to stillness. Pompeii, once alive with sound and color, fades into silence beneath the sky's heavy hand.
Silence beneath the ash. The roar that once filled the air fades gradually, not because the mountain has grown quiet, but because the ash has grown thick enough to swallow sound itself. What remains is a heavy, muffled stillness, like the hush after a storm, when the world seems unsure whether it still exists. The sky is no longer visible, nor the ground as it once was. Everything is layered in soft gray, shapes rounded, edges erased. Where streets once echoed with voices and footsteps, there is now only the faint whisper of settling dust. The weight that pressed down so fiercely begins to stabilize, no longer falling in waves, but resting where it has landed. Roofs lie buried, doorways vanish, courtyards fill. The city is being sealed, not with violence now, but with quiet finality. Inside homes, in streets, beneath porticos and stairways, life has paused mid-movement. A hand still reaches toward a door. A figure leans forward as if about to stand. Another shields a loved one. These moments, caught between breath and stillness, remain suspended as ash continues to drift, fine and endless, covering everything with the same soft, indifferent touch. The air grows colder. Darkness deepens into something complete and absolute. The familiar smells of bread, oil, animals, and people are replaced with the dry scent of stone and dust. The city's heartbeat, once loud with markets, laughter, wheels, and voices, has stopped entirely. Above the buried streets, the mountain continues to rumble faintly, its energy slowly releasing into the sky, but Pompeii no longer hears it. The ordinary day that began with quiet routine has ended in a silence that feels eternal. Beneath layers of ash and pumice, the city now rests exactly as it was in its final hours, not ruined by time, but preserved within it. A moment sealed away, waiting for eyes that will not come for many centuries. Centuries of stillness. Time moves differently above the buried city. Days pass into seasons, seasons into years, and years into centuries, while beneath the surface, Pompeii remains untouched by the slow decay that claims other places. Wind smooths the ground, grass takes root, new generations walk unknowingly over streets, homes, and lives sealed just below their feet. The mountain grows quiet again, its slopes returning to the calm shape of a sleeping giant. Ash hardens into layers of stone, preserving walls, rooms, and the spaces where people once stood. Rain falls, seeps, dries. The world above forgets what lies below. Names fade, stories thin into distant legend. Empires rise and fall, roads shift, languages change. The buried city waits in perfect stillness, holding the last breath of an ordinary day that never finished. Lamps, dishes, tools, and footsteps remain where they were left, locked in the moment when time stopped. For nearly 2,000 years, silence is complete. The city found again. Many lifetimes later, long after memory has faded into legend, the ground above Pompeii begins to stir with a different kind of movement, not the hurried footsteps of daily life, but the careful, curious touch of those who seek the past. It starts quietly, with workers digging wells, farmers turning soil, builders clearing land. Hard surfaces are struck beneath the earth. Strange walls appear where none should be. A painted fragment, a carved stone, a piece of pottery rises from the dust, and questions begin to gather. At first, no one understands what they have found. The layers are thick, stubborn, holding their secrets tightly. But as excavation deepens, rooms emerge, not ruins worn down by centuries, but spaces intact, frozen, waiting. Doorways open into streets still lined with stepping stones. Shops reveal counters, jars, tools left exactly where they stood. Walls carry painted scenes that still hold color beneath the ashes' protective seal. The city begins to breathe again, not with life, but with memory. Figures appear in stone where bodies once lay, their forms preserved in the shapes left behind. A hand raised, a family huddled close, a dog still straining at a chain. Each discovery is quiet, yet powerful, like whispers from another world carried forward through time.
Scholars walk these streets carefully, tracing footsteps left 2 millennia before. They see ovens still holding bread, tables set for meals never eaten, letters half written, tools mid-use. Pompeii does not tell a story of kings or battles. It tells of ordinary lives interrupted in an instant, of mornings begun and evenings expected, of people who did not know their final day had arrived. And the mountain still rises nearby, silent now, watching as strangers move through the city it once buried. What was lost has been found again, not restored to life, but returned to memory. Pompeii stands as a quiet reminder that history is not only made of great events, but of small, ordinary days that can vanish without warning. And in the still streets uncovered from beneath the ash, the echoes of that final day linger, not in sound, but in presence, a city paused between breath and eternity.